Hello, my dear friends. Welcome again to this new episode in our CBLE Book Club. Thank you for your continued support to this channel here in YouTube, and I hope that it is also contributing to your spiritual growth during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, before I proceed, I hope that you're still aware that despite the lifting of the quarantine protocols in some areas of our nations and even the degrading of the alert level of our own quarantines here in the city and in the island, we should be aware that COVID-19 is still present and has not yet been eliminated. So there's the tendency that because we have regained our freedom of movement, that we thought that everything's going to be fine already, or everything's already fine. Now, just to give you a kind of a personal experience, yesterday and today I went out to attend to some things, but it's not really long. No, I was not out for long, but it just took me a few minutes, and I could feel even in myself that when you go out, you already have this sense that everything is going to be fine. And I keep repeating to myself that this is not correct. This is not a correct feeling. Of course, feelings may be neither wrong or right, but in a sense, the perception that goes with the feelings, no? Okay, you really will feel liberated when, after a long time, after a long period of being in our own houses, you were able to go out again and see things, no, from a wider perspective, and you will see that for example, the traffic condition in the city has almost gone back to normal, and so you will think that everything is going to be fine or everything is already fine. But that is not correct perception. That is not a correct perception. In fact, the virus is still with us, and that is something that we really have to be aware of, no? And take note, the casualties of this pandemic is already alarming, and so we should not take it for granted, or we might lose whatever we gained for the past 2 months of being inside our own houses, undergoing our own quarantines, no? So I hope that you will stay safe, and we will not throw caution into the air, especially during this time. I think we should be more careful now that everybody is out. The probability of meeting people who have asymptomatic COVID-19 condition might be more higher, or it might be higher, because we are now in mingling with other people, when before it is very limited. So it's more dangerous. In my own opinion, I'm not a doctor of medicine, but in my own opinion, based on what I've read and what I've heard from, of course, from the internet, it's more dangerous now. Why? Because of the higher probability that we might be able to encounter someone who is carrying the virus. So be more alert, be more careful, do not lose your guards down, or do not let your guards down. Okay, now let's proceed. I hope that you have your journals with you. This is the journaling is important. It's a very important element in our gathering every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Without this, your experience of our encounter here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights will be just one half if you are not really into it. So it will be good. I hope kahit na small entry, short entries lang, you don't need to write a novel, but at least you can see the journey that we are doing here in our book series. Okay, for today, or for this episode, we will be talking about silence. What is silence? What is it all about? According to Nowen, without silence, the word of God cannot bear fruit. One of the most depressing aspects of contemporary life is the almost complete absence of silence. And sometimes Henry would wonder if the word of God can really be received in the centers of our hearts, if our constant chatter and noise and electronic interactions keep blocking the way of the heart. As St. Ambrose of Milan says, by silence, I have seen many saved, but by words none. And Saint Seraphim of Sarov says, silence is the sacrament of the world to come. Words are the weapons of this world. I think this is beautiful because nowadays we are, whether we like it or not, we are actually bombarded by words. Just for example, if you are going to drive, no? Or even if you don't drive, you ride a car or a jeepney, what do you observe? You are bombarded by words, both the written word and the spoken word. For example, inside the car, the the car radio is on, so it's already chattering. No, there's no silence there inside the taxi or inside the car because you are listening to radio or talking to your companions. If you're going to look at your cell phone, again, sometimes it would ring, sometimes it would beep, telling you words are coming in. If you are driving on the main street, for example, you will see a lot of billboards and graphics there. Again, with words. Words are almost everywhere, and they are vying for our attention. They are competing for our attention. That's why the more interesting the graphics are, the better. Why? Because it catches our attention. The bigger the billboard, the brighter the billboard, the more colorful the billboard, the better. The reason is because it tried to catch our attention. And so what do? We get distracted by all this. Of course, at first, you will be really interested, and then later on, the appeal will lose naman. And then that's the reason also, again, why the billboards has to be replaced again and again, time and again for a certain period, and new pictures, new designs, new colors should be put up again to attract our attention. Because of this, our capacity to be silent is dulled. No? Wala na ta capacity to be silent because we want words to, we are uncomfortable in silence. I think I'll just recall me, for example, in your own experience today. When was the time when you encounter silence in your life today? What moment? Now, there is no noise at all, no distractions, no radio blaring out music or commentaries, no television that is on, no reading of books, no chatter, but just silence. I don't know if you have experienced that today. That is why sometimes when we interact, we are uncomfortable with silence. We would like to fill all the minutes, all the time with our chatters. No, hindi kita mapakali kung gahipos lang. For example, we gather together and then suddenly we just fell silent. What will be your reaction? Would you be happy now that we are silent? Of course, you will feel uncomfortable. Why is everybody silent? And so you want to break the silence instead of maintaining the silence. Sometimes there are moments like when you are conversing and then suddenly everybody went silent. What do? Masing, ay, naglabay ang anghel. You see? You cannot even stop yourself from just enjoying the silence that we have. You cannot even savor, you cannot help yourself but to break the silence, even the silence that is almost serendipitous, as we say. Now, in the spiritual the spiritual life, silence is very important because it is the ground on which the Word of God can grow. Without silence, it will not grow. It will be filled with clutters. Words, the world, our world that is full of words, are like little pebbles on the ground. That when you plant the seed of the Word of God, it has no room anymore because it is filled with so many gravel, with so many little stones. So what do? You have to uproot it. You have to dig the ground, remove the stones, and allow the Word, the seed of the Word, to grow. As I said, words are very important, of course, because even God recognizes that word is important. In fact, the English version of the first chapter of John will tell us that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. In other words, the Word is important. But we have to differentiate between listening intently and from the voice of God, from the noise of the world. So, what is the difference between the two? How do we differentiate noise? Noise is a collection of sounds that doesn't make sense. So, noise is something that distracts us. Noise is something that makes us uncomfortable. And that is not what we ought to listen to, because we will just be distracted. We will just be passing time. For example, mas kayo can listen to music just to pass time. And sometimes you are attentive to it, sometimes you don't really attend to it, no? So just let it play in the background and do your work. So those are background noises, and there are also noises that are really irritating. Like for example, if you are like for example listening to what they call this one, to the hammering of the rooftop, for example, the barking of dogs at nighttime, the crying of babies in the airplane. Those are noises that are distracting. And we are filled with those. And sometimes noise can be pleasurable also. But of course, when it is pleasurable, it's no longer noise. It is already music. Or poetry, for example. Why is it music? Is pleasurable to the ear? Because it has rhythm, it has logic, in fact. So it has arrangement. Why is it that you love to listen to poems? Because it has rhythm, it has metrics, and so on and so forth. Why is it that you listen to readings and to watch movies? Because it tells a story. In other words, it is a meaningful relations with the word. It is meaningful. There's meaning in our absorption of those words. Okay, so you can only do that if you are silent. Why? Because silence is the space that we give to the Word of God. And we have to recognize that we are capable of making words. And those words can either be good or bad. It can hurt or it can care for. No? Klaro na siya. That's why St. James in his letter, chapter 3, verse 6 says that among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a whole wicked world in itself. Why is it so? Because it can speak unimaginable evil. It can create a lot of hurts. It can create a lot of falsehood. It can create a lot of misunderstanding. It can destroy relationships. The words that comes out from our mouth. That's why we have to be careful of what we say. Be careful of what we speak of, because it can hurt other people. But on the other hand also, if words can destroy, words can also build. And that is something that we have to really put into practice. That's why gossiping is never tolerated by the early Christian communities, because they have recognized that by gossiping, it breaks the communion of the faithful. It breaks your relationship, gossiping. Of course, we have known that, no? Why is it that gossiping seems to be so interesting? Why is it that gossiping seems to be palatable? I do not know what's the reason, no? But it tickles our imagination. It tickles our feelings, no? So that's why maybe there are people who are really gaining a lot of joy and pleasure from hearing gossips. But on the other hand, good news. The good news is something that builds. The good words, no? The good words that we talk about, we speak about, builds. Now that is something that we have to, develop. No? The ability to be able to give praise, the ability to compliment, the ability to constructively criticize people, no? For example. No? But beyond all this, I think it is important that we are able to give our praise, give our compliments to others, no? Because sometimes we are so stingy We are so stingy with our compliments and too liberal and generous with our criticism. No? That's something in Balanga we have we are guilty of. We are so stingy, kadalok sa ato maghatag sang praise, pero we are so generous, we are so liberal in giving criticism. Mas madamo ang mga criticisms nga ginahambal ta kaysa sa mga praises nga ginahatag naton sa aton nga isig katawo, no? So we are stingy with our praises and compliments, and we are liberal in our criticism, which is wrong. It should have been like this. We should be stingy with our criticism and generous or liberal with our praises, no? Because it builds community. So the word, good word, builds community, and you'll never know how much a good word can result, no, or affect a person. You'll never know the extent of the joy that you will be able to give or allow the other person to experience by your generous act of having kind words. All right. Now, without silence, the word cannot become our inner guide. And without meditation, it cannot build this home in the hearts and speak from there. So, dua ka bagay ang dapat natin tandaan, no? We have to be silent, but that is not just merely a silence that is the absence of noise or the absence of sound, but it is a silence that will bring us deeper into our hearts where we can encounter the Lord. So silence is not in itself the good that we are looking for. Hindi na nga kumasig, ay, kung malambal, okay na siya. No, silence is not the good in itself. We are trying to be silent, or we are trying to put packets of silence into our own daily lives so that we can encounter the Lord there. Alam mo, our life is like a room, no? Do kwarto. Kung ang kwarto mo puno usang damok da, puno usang lapta, paano ka batong bisita? Hindi na. Wala na. There's no space, there's no time, there is no room for a guest to enter. Now, that is also true with our lives. If we have no time for silence, it is like having no space to receive the visitor. It is having no space or having no time to be silent is like having no place where you can welcome the Lord. So, my dear friends, that is something that is very important that we have to learn how to develop, no? So, silence. A silence that is not a silence that is not catatonic, no? Yung isa silence na may ipos na ko di, bailan ko din ninyo, kaya ipos ko. Hindi na mo that's not the silence that I am, or nagtulala ka na ng klase silence. That is not the silence that I am trying to talk about here. It is a productive silence. Kaya mo na nga itong modern, this is our modern fear, the fear of the modern person, that he or she is not productive. That's why you want to be productive. Not necessarily productive in terms of economics, but productive that you have the sense that you are doing something. So how about yung silence siya? Wala ka sa obrahonda. Hindi ka magbasa libro. Hindi ka mataw sa YouTube. Hindi ka mataw sa Facebook. Tapos wala ka sa pamatian. You will feel unproductive. And that is something that we are afraid of. We are, as a modern person, in a postmodern world, if I may be more precise, we are afraid that we are not productive. So we want to be productive all the time. Sometimes we would not even sleep. We will just sleep a little time lang, short time lang. How? Because we want to put as much as possible more time in producing what we think is important. Silence siya, na siyang klase silence na niya. So that's why we are afraid. We are afraid, number one, because we think that if we are in silence, we are not doing anything and we are becoming useless, irrelevant, unproductive. That's the first important thing that we need to transcend in order to appreciate silence. That silence is not necessarily unproductive. In fact, the silence that we are trying to develop in ourselves is a silence that leads to an encounter. A silence that leads us to a time and space where we can meet the most important person in our lives. And hopefully that is God. So my dear friends, I hope that you were able to understand what I am talking about here in terms of silence. I'm sorry if there are backgrounds, no sound noise, no background noises. I have to switch on the aircon because it's very hot if I'm not going to switch on the aircon. So I'm sorry for the inconvenience of those who might be not be able to hear clearly what I am speaking here, because I already explained that in my previous video that my microphone got it was defective now, no, it just would not function anymore. So I am exerting as much effort as possible in trying to make my voice a little bit clearer, and I hope that my message is getting across. Now for this time, I want you to go back, to get your journals. You don't need to answer while the video is on. Maybe you can do that afterwards, after the video or during the replay, in answering the question that I will now pose. So thank you very much. Again, see you next episode.